One of the great skills of half guard, which I teach to all of my students, and they all do a fine job of using, is the knee lever. This is a very powerful tool from half guard. It can be used as a direct sweep in itself. It can also be used as an off-balancing mechanism to set up other kinds of sweeps. Your first step when it's time to learn the knee lever and make it an effective part of your game is just the mechanics of levering someone over with your legs from half guard. Let's have a look at that right now. Okay, we'll demonstrate with your back to the camera. From a situation where we start off here in front of our training partner, the core ideas behind a knee lever. First, your opponent's knee should be on the mat. Okay, in order to put true leverage through his hip, I need his knee on the floor. Don't worry, if the knee's not on the mat, we'll deal with that very soon. Second thing, the positioning of my knee. I need my knee right there where his hip meets his buttocks on the inside. So watch my right knee, don't be distracted by my left. My right knee is just sitting like so. This provides an off-balancing force where my foot gets hooked into the floor and I use the floor to move his hip. Okay, now you can see if his knee wasn't on the mat, I would lose that ability. So I need the floor. The floor is the most important part of the sweep. The floor prevents his knee from moving, and the floor gives me the ability to move my knee inside his leg. The second key ingredient is my other knee, which will pinch around his hip and prevent him from moving his knee off the mat. Okay, so I want to capture his knee to the mat by pinching my knees together. From here, I bring my foot up and I reinforce it with the other foot. Don't cross your ankles, just cross the toes. Now, from this position, I'm just going to take my butt just an inch off the floor and just turn my knee. Okay, this creates a pressure that puts my opponent down. The pressure is quite similar in a standing situation where I head to the outside single leg, where my shoulder goes right inside my training partner's hip, okay, and I run the pipe. This will create an immediate knockdown. With that pressure, if you stand, that pressure right inside the hip is what puts an opponent down to the floor. Same thing with a knee lift. My knee goes right in there behind the buttocks and creates a strong lift. I pin his knee to the floor, reinforce it, and that's what turns him over. So the key element is that my hips come off the floor just an inch. I pinch my knees and I point my knees out and away. That forces him to base out with his hands in order to preserve his balance. But you can see what's happened. He went from a situation where he was in good balance to one where he lost his balance. If I were to control his basing hand so he couldn't base out, it would be a clean sweep to the mat. So solo, I want to take his knee on the floor, capture it, pinch my knees around his hip, take my ass an inch or two off the floor, and just point my knees out and away. Once again, I capture, cross, but without crossing the ankles, just the toes, take my buttocks off the floor, and point my knees out and away. So inside leg captures the knee, gets reinforced by the outside foot, and then from here, I just take my hips an inch off the mat and turn my knees away. These are the essential mechanics behind all of the knee levers that we're going to be looking at. Now, we just looked at knee lever mechanics, and I'm going to now give you the single most important part of knee lever mechanics, that's head position. You might be asking, why didn't you just put that in the mechanics section? Well, because it's so damn important, it deserves its own little study. Because without head position, no knee lever is going to work. So let's look at this right now. Okay. In any given knee lever situation, if my head is outside my opponent's body, here on the outside, it's almost impossible to knee lever someone over. Okay, I don't care how strong you are, I don't care how long your femur bones are. It's almost impossible. The single most important mechanical detail in any knee lever situation is where I get my head inside their head. If my head occupies the outside position, it's almost impossible to take someone over. And I weigh more than he does. Okay? So our whole thing under these circumstances is to take our head and bring it inside their head. If they move their head away from you, this is not the time for knee levers. Okay, we'll see that it is the time for things like arm drags and single legs. Okay, so your first battle when it's time to get knee levers is the battle for his post hand. That's your first battle. But your biggest battle, the most important one, is your head position. So when we're working here, like so, it's important from here that I get my head set in these good positions. That's why I'm a big fan of holding people at the lat muscle. That's why I'm a big fan of scooping inside a leg, because it more or less guarantees that you get that good head position. Okay? Just pull someone in, you got the head position you seek. Once we get that head position, it's so easy to lever them over. Okay? But if you don't get that head position and the head goes out to the outside, you feel like you can try as hard as you want and you'll never take someone over. Okay? So the whole way I approach knee levers is bound around knee position. And it's going to give you an infallible rule of thumb that will make you damn good at knee levering. How I go to attack with knee levers is based on a simple observation. Am I inside the head or am I outside the head? Because everything I do comes off that simple observation. If I ever get to control his post and I get my head inside his, it's knee levers every fucking time. I just come in, bump him over. If he falls to his back, great, congratulations. At World Championship level, that's unlikely to happen. Much more likely, he'll post out and you'll have to scramble into some other form of attack. Okay? As we both go to get up together, this is the time for us to go to the back. And as the body comes upright, this is the time for us to go into the legs. Okay? And you finish like so. Now, the obvious question here is, what do you do if the head goes to the outside? We will see later that any time we cannot control head position. Okay, we start in like so, and I try for the move and the head position comes out. That's the time for us to start coming up and do other moves. Okay, you've got drags. We'll look at drags soon. If I lose control of my training partner's arm and his head moves up and away, that's the time for us to go into single legs. And from the single legs, not that difficult for us to come up off the floor. Okay, so you'll see everything comes out of head position. If I have my head on the inside, knee levers. If I cannot get my head on the inside, then 9 times out of 10 it'll be some kind of follow-up attack that involves pushing into an opponent. Arm drags, single legs, double legs, etc. Now let's go further into the knee lever and look at it as a very effective sweeping method. Let's have a situation when someone is here working from half guard. We have managed to capture their knee down on the floor. We're going to take a 2-on-1 wrist grip, where I take 2 of my hands and lock onto my training partner's wrist, just like so. We bring our 2 feet together underneath our training partner, and then we just take our hips off the floor, pinch together, and send the man over. This is a very effective way of sweeping an opponent. Now, what you're going to find is you've trapped one of your opponent's arms quite successfully. From here, as I go underneath my training partner, his only recourse is to take his other hand over to the other side. When we hit the knee lever, be confident that there's only so much he can do to stop himself from falling. Understand that that left hand can partially hold him up, but not fully hold him up. All we're going to do in these circumstances is bring your head higher than his head. That's all that's required. At some point, I have to release his hand and he will probably quickly put it out on the floor. So we're just going to release together, put the hand up over our training partner's waist. Then from here, we just hip heist straight forward onto our training partner, and usually we take the back. Okay? So once again, we're here in front of our training partner. We get that simple hooking of the leg and we capture our training partner's wrist. Now, I bring everything over to the side and we just quickly pop our man over and get up. Once we get up in these situations, you're right there in a good attacking position. We capture the wrist, my foot over his knee, foot to foot. I bring my head underneath him. I don't want my body out here. I can't get any sweeping leverage. My head goes under. From that position, look how my hips come off the floor, and we send the man over. Now, with my head higher than his, I can wrap my opponent. If you have strong hands, you might be able to hold someone here, but more likely he will yank that arm violently out, and now the onus is on you to get up and get over his head. This is a very, very effective way of sweeping people. Now, here's a simple variation of it. I called this one a 2-on-1 wrist. There's also a 2-on-1 elbow. Same move and a very similar grip. This time, we go in, instead of going 2-on-1 wrist, we go in here and here and control the 2-on-1 elbow. You can also go here, your choice. Okay, this gives a more direct control of your opponent's elbow. I get my head underneath their chest, and as always from here, I shift my hips through. As we hit the knee lever and send them over, you have a better control of your opponent's elbow this time. So when he goes to pull his arm out, it's a lot more difficult. And as a result, a lot easier for us to come up and take top position. Okay, so what you're generally going to find is 2-on-1 wrist is a little easier to get. 2-on-1 elbow is also pretty easy to get and is a little more controlling towards the finish when you go to complete the move. They're both really good. So there's the initial catch right in here. I might go in and control my training partner's elbow. From this position, look how we shift our hips through underneath and rotate the man through. When we go to scramble for position now, it's a difficult thing for him to get away from us. Okay, so this is a very, very useful way of operating with 2-on-1 grips. Now, we looked at 2-on-1 grips. These are very effective, but so too are 1-on-1 grips. Let's have a look at these now. Now, 2-on-1 grips are a little more robust than 1-on-1 grips. That's why people favor them. But you'd be surprised how much success you can have with 1-on-1 grips too. Working from any kind of knee lever situation here in front of my training partner, whether it be high or low, as we go to play in this position, very often we'll be able to get 1-on-1 grips. It's not a difficult grip to get to. Okay, so typically from any kind of knee lever, he's typically reaching to come in towards us, and that's exactly what we're looking for. We get a hold of our training partner's two wrists. Now from here, I just kick my legs through. We take our hips through underneath our training partner. I bring my head across my training partner's body, and from here, we hit a simple knee lever and knock him down to a shoulder. Now, I know what you're thinking. Man, I'm not the strongest guy in the world. These guys get slippery, no gi. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of times from here. Once we hit this move, we bring our head across the center line. We take the guy through it, and the guy just pulls the arm free. And you'll be right back in that same situation we saw earlier. The main thing is that my head be higher than his head. Okay, and I'll be propped up on my arm. If I'm down on his shoulder, there's a good chance now he'll win the scramble. There's still good things we can do. There's all kinds of leg lock attacks from here, for example, but we want to get up and sweep this guy and score points. So it's important that if we do see our opponent face out, we get our head higher than his head, and now we've got to get our hips up at least the same height as his. So this is the key. This bottom leg has to heist. As I post on my training partner, that heisting leg gets my hips up higher than his. Now my hips are higher than his hips and my head is higher than his. Even if he's posting and holding us off now, just focus on getting to your opponent's waist. Okay? As he goes to explode out of here, the body lock makes it very, very difficult. And you'll be in a position now where you can walk through your opponent and go into your various passes. So once again, from a standard half guard situation, just like so. We've got a knee shield in place, we get a hold of our training partner's wrists, and we punch on through. Now we just go into a fairly basic knee lever and send them over. As we go into the scramble, our whole focus is on getting our hips up. So he tries to hold us off, we go through and get to our body lock. If he tries to pull away, it's a difficult thing. And you'll be in the perfect position now to walk through into your various passes. So 1-on-1s represent one of the best ways for us to work out of knee levers. Now, here's a variation of the one-on-one, which gets a lot of mileage in no-gi situations. We have an opponent in front of us. We're working out of half guard. As always, got a good knee shield up, and our hand comes in here and controls his wrist. Sometimes you'll find you can't get a hold of the second wrist. He's pulling it away, you can't get a hold. Whenever you see this kind of thing going on, we just punch through and we scoop into our training partner's leg. You still have control of your training partner's wrist here like so. Don't try to hold it with your hand. He yanks out, it's gone. Push it in. Use his body as an impediment. And then from here, focus on getting your hips underneath his hips, just like so. That's gonna force him to put his hand on the floor. Probably further out than that. You've got that knee lever where you can just send the guy through down to a shoulder. Now, when we come up and we get into a scramble, you've got his knee elevated. So as you scramble, his high knee makes it very, very difficult for him to be effective here. Even if it gets off his elbows. You've got such an unfair advantage because of that high knee that as you go to hunt, you're in situations where it's so hard for him to get away from you. He tries to get back up, you just control the bottom leg, and you find yourself now in the perfect position to attack. So once again, from a half guard situation, down on the floor, we get a hold of our training partner's wrist, and I go through and scoop. From here, look how we bring our feet in, turn our hips underneath, and hit that knee lever, turning him down towards the shoulder. Now, his leg is so hiked up that when we get into a scramble, it's so hard for him to get away from us. Even if he got his knee all the way up, it would mean very little, just because that leg's so high up in its elevation. Key elements. From an initial start, we go through, we secure a wrist, kick through and catch. Turning and sending the man over. Creating a scramble where you have such an intrinsic advantage that you should always be able to dominate the end of the scramble. So this too is a very effective way of working out a half guard bottom, courtesy of the knee lever. Let's have a look at the idea of knee levers as creating scrambles where you have a definite advantage over your opponent. Scrambles that are truly neutral are exhausting, and more often than not, they're not very profitable. You can run around like a cat chasing its own tail, and at the end of the day, you don't have a lot to show for it. One of the beauties of knee levers is that you can create scrambles, you off-balance your opponent, and they desperately try to regain their balance, where you always have an intrinsic advantage over your opponent. And very often from here, you've got to take your opponent's back or get to a lock around their waist and control them down to the floor and score points pretty reliably. So let's have a look at this. The knee lever is a fantastic mechanism just to knock someone out of balance. But in truth, guys, when you're controlling people no-gi late in a match, there's a lot of sweat, you're tired, he's tired, and it's hard just to hold on to wrists, okay? You can hold on to them for a period of time, but not forever. So if Nick Ortiz just violently rips his arm out, even though I weigh more than him, I doubt very much if I can hold it in place. But what you can't realistically do in these situations is just get a hold of a wrist, get a hold of two wrists or what have you, 2-on-1, it doesn't really matter. Just focus on this is the main wrist because that's the side I'm sweeping towards. And from here, create an initial off balance on your training partner. So I just shoot my hips through underneath, off balance him like so. So he's out of balance, but it ain't over yet, okay? And from these situations, just focus on building up and getting height. I need my head higher than his head, and ultimately, I need my hips higher than his hips. Can you see what's happened here, guys? There's 2 points where I need to be higher, hips and head. I've won the battle for head, but Nick Ortiz has won the battle for height. His hips are higher than mine, my head is higher than his. Now, if I'm going to win the scramble, it's all about my ability to get higher than his hips. Okay? The only way I can do that is with a hip heist. I'm currently sitting with my ass on the floor. I'm going to post on my training partner's body. It's an important thing. I use a thumb post right there in the armpit. So if he goes towards me, it's difficult. And that creates a situation where I can heist. And now my hips are up with his hips. My head is over his. And we're in a situation now where we're locked on board. you can fully expect him to want to scramble up and away from us. So it's important that we be able to put weight over our training partner. So when he tries to take his hands off the mat, it's a very difficult thing. Okay? There's a danger now he'll go into a Granby roll. So we have to start putting our foot right there, breaking him down to a hip. When he goes through to Granby now, it's hard from the hips. It's going to be hard for him to get away from us. So our whole thing is to put our ear on our training partner's back, solidify this tight waist grip. So when he goes to get back up, it's going to be slow and difficult. As he fights his way back up, you have the choice of going here at the wrist or here at the head and going through into your favorite scoring positions. So, essentially what we're doing is we're creating a scramble where you know what your goals are. You got to get your head higher than his, and you got to get your hips higher than his. When you first come out of a knee lever, it's pretty easy to win the head battle. Then you got to win the hip battle afterwards. And the key is your posting hand. So once again, half guard situation. However it's gone, we've managed to secure at least one of our training partner's wrists. 2-on-1 elbow, it doesn't really matter. You got a hold of the wrists. Now, I bring my hips through underneath my training partner and I create that initial off balance. When I come up to my posted hand, my head is higher than his head. But unfortunately, his hips are higher than mine. So we start posting on our training partner. So that when we both go to get up together, you're in a situation now where now my hips are higher than his hips and my head is higher than his. When he goes to scramble away from us, it's a difficult thing to get away. Okay, you've got enormous control over your opponent. You could throw your hooks in. That's certainly one scoring method. You could break your opponent down to the floor. You could maneuver all the way in behind an opponent, block, etc., whatever you want. Any breakdown you favor from that position. But the main thing is that we create conditions where we come up and our head is high up off the mat and you're posted on his body. So we can't just turn, push you flat, and return your head to the mat. So we have an opponent here in front of us. However it's happened, we've got a hold of our training partner's wrist. We send them over. My biggest concern is he pushes into me. And now my head goes back underneath him. So we have a hand behind us and we post on the tricep. So when he goes to turn back into us, it's tough. Now it's all about our hips. Because my head was higher than his head, it was pretty easy for us to get up into a situation where now we have excellent control over our training partner. So this is how we create scrambles when you have an innate advantage over your opponent. We're looking at this idea that in the context of no-gi, most of the grips that we employ are relatively fragile. And as a result, oftentimes when we go to perform a given sweep, an opponent can yank out of the grips that we have and you end up in an uncontrolled scramble. You off-balance your opponent, you do a good job of that, but you don't have the control necessary to really force someone down to their back and solidify the sweep and get your points. So we adopt, as it were, a two-stage approach to many of the no-gi sweeps, where you use a fairly conventional form of jiu-jitsu sweep to off-balance an opponent to break their stance, and then you finish by getting up to their hips, waist, legs, and wrestling them down to the floor to complete the sweep. As it were, you create the conditions for a scramble where you have some kind of advantage. A really good way for us to do this out of a knee lever is to use a lat post, because this more or less guarantees that we'll be able to control distance after we've hit an initial knockdown. So, the basic mechanics of the knee lever are well known by now. We control a training partner's wrist, and then the question is, what do I do with my second hand? We've looked at versions where we scooped inside our training partner's leg. That was a particularly useful version because it really enables you to control the scramble after the sweep. We looked at the idea of double wrist control. That was a good one too. We looked at the idea of just working 2-on-1 wrist. Okay, now let's look at the idea of 1-on-1 wrist, and at the same time just posting on our training partner's lat muscle. This doesn't look like it's very useful right now, but in a few seconds, once I've knocked my opponent over, you'll see it's very useful. So always the basic conditions for a knee lever are the same. Rotate. I want my calf muscle over his calf muscle. The closer to the knee, the better. I want my knee right underneath my training partner's hip, where it functions as a lever, a long lever. The femur is one of the longest levers on the body and enables us to move their body weight fairly easily. I need his knee on the mat, and I need to be able to control distance at the end of the scramble. So here we are. We've got the basic conditions for a knee lever. I just plant my feet and I lever him over and push. Now, this is good. You've knocked him out of balance. But because we're working without a gi, there's a very high chance my opponent will explosively rip his arm out of my grip and put his hand out for balance on the other side. Okay? Unless you have extraordinarily long and strong hands, fingers, it's very, very difficult just to control someone your own size and strength, and even worse, if they're bigger and stronger than you, just with a hand-on-hand grip. Okay? I don't have a particularly strong grip, but I outweigh my training partner by quite a bit. But you'll see that if I try to hold on with the death grip and he goes to explosively yank, I don't have a chance of holding him in place. Okay, your fingers just aren't that strong. You can get a much better effect by pushing the hand inwards, that's true, okay? But once you go to knock someone over from here, there's going to come a time where they just effortlessly rip that arm out. Okay, they can do that because this hand is on the floor, and as a result they can post on one hand and pull the other hand down, okay? So I might better control someone's hand long enough just to push it in, but at some point from here, I'm going to start working like so. But did you see what happened with my right hand? I posted on my training partner's lat muscle. And as a result, you've taken him out of balance at the completion of the sweep. So yes, it's true. I did lose control of the grip that I had, okay, as will often be the case when we work without a gi. But it didn't matter, because I had my other hand ready to take over and dominate the end of the sweep, where even as I lost the grip, I was able to post on him and create winning conditions after the loss of the grip. So here we are, we're playing with our training partner. I take a grip, doesn't look very threatening, so he doesn't yank away immediately from that. And I just push it inwards. I hit the knee lever and I post on my training partner's lat. When he goes to recover from here, it's very, very difficult. And now it's very easy for us to build up the height and get in behind the training partner. Okay? I often encourage my students when they work with knee levers, especially with no gi, use that hand on the lat. It makes, as it were, it's a proof against failure in the future, the failure of your grip. Even when your grip fails, you have such an advantage through distance control through that post hand that you'll almost always go on to dominate the scramble after the effects of the sweep. So here we are, fairly standard knee shield type situation, and we're playing here in half guard. I go through and I score my training partner's wrist. That's not particularly threatening. It doesn't feel like there's anything crazy happening at this point. But then once I place my body in and start going like so, now he feels threatened. Okay, so of course he's going to violently rip his right arm out. But we're already dominating our opponent through that pushing hand. That puts my head up and it creates a situation where it's an easy heist. And from here it's an easy thing for us now to get in behind his arms and into a winning position. Okay, most of the time from here we're looking for our opponent's back. But it's not unheard of that you can go into double leg takedowns if your opponent postures up, etc., etc. Which one you choose will be dependent upon what he does. If the head's down, take the back. If the head's up, go into his legs. So for example, we're here playing from half guard bottom. You play in, there's that lat post from this position. I come through and up, and now I find myself right in on double leg. Okay, from the double leg, we go into work. So you'll see which alternative you choose, between the waist to the back versus the legs up to the waist, will kind of depend on how he moves rather than how you move. The important thing is to have that lat post ready to go. So that even as you fail with your grip, which is very likely, given it's a no-gi situation, then you'll be in a position to dominate the events after that grip failure. Now we're looking at knee levers. I know what you're thinking. You say, okay, these knee levers look pretty cool, but what if my opponent doesn't have his knee on the mat? What do I do now? Don't worry, there's some simple ways for us to put a knee down. Let's have a look at a situation where my opponent goes into a split squat. Now, a split squat is a good position for my opponent to control me, which deliberately takes his knee off the mat. Okay, so now knee levers are going to be more or less impossible. It's difficult from here. In these situations, I need to be able to return his knee to the mat. So we're just going to shift our hips out, and we're going to take our shoelaces and place them right there in front of our training partner's shoelaces. As a result, we're in a good position now to give a small lift with both of our knees and just extend his leg. Put his knee down on the floor. As a result, we can put that knee shield back in, and you've got what you really wanted all along, the wrist with a knee on the floor. Once you've got wrist and knee on the floor, you guys know what to do now. It's just about getting your chest in towards his chest, your knee through underneath his knee, and your two knees to point up to the ceiling. You send the man over. Then you're back in your scramble position. If you get higher than him with your hips, you win the scramble and you score. If he's so strong with his hips that he can drive back in towards you, then you go right back into a submission scramble. You go into the legs and look to break his legs. Either way, you're going to get a good result. So once again, my opponent has a split squat. I go in with reverse De La Riva. From reverse De La Riva, we go in and control our training partner. Look how I take my outside foot and I place it right there in front of my training partner's shoelaces. From that shoelace grip, we just give a little push. It puts his knee down on the mat. As soon as the knees are down on the mat, we go in and control our training partner and then knee level them straight on over. You're in the perfect position now to scramble. If you get that post and get up high, you'll win the positional scramble. If he's faster and stronger than you and pushes back in, you go right back into your leg locks and you'll break him on the legs. Let's have a look at it from another angle. So, from in here, look how we give a little push away to create a little space and get our foot inside. Once our foot is inside, he can put all his weight on me. Just hold off, just like so, framing, and we give a little lift that puts his knee down on the mat. We capture our training partner, and from here, we're in the perfect position to scramble. If I get up, my head over his, you're going to win that scramble every time. If he's so strong that he's able to post and stop you coming forward, then just recline backwards and throw your legs, roll through, and you've got a nice win on the legs. Either way, it's a great outcome for you. We've been looking at variations of the knee lever, and one thing they've all had in common so far is there was distance between my chest and my opponent's chest. And some of you might be thinking, man, I don't have the strongest hands in the world. If I grab a strong guy's wrist and I try to control them without chest-to-chest contact, I just don't feel I will be able to knee lever them over in time, and not even sure I can win a scramble. So what should we be looking to do? An alternative is to use an elbow lever. Let's have a look at that right now. This will give us a much stronger degree of contact with an opponent. So here we are, we've got a basic knee shield in place, and we get a hold of our training partner's wrist, and you're worried the guy's just going to violently rip away and you lose it. So instead, we're going to come up and we're going to thread our elbow over his elbow. And then I'm going to hike my elbow right up into his armpit. So when he goes to yank out, it's pretty damn difficult. Then from here, I just come down and I just post on his hip, just like so. And now we're in the perfect position to hit a nice knee level. As always, our 2 feet just come in close together. We just go right over. There's no basing out on this one. You've got too much control of your opponent's far arm. From this position, as he tries to get up, we just put our foot here and behind us, and we just take our knee off the mat. So as he goes into a scramble, you're in the perfect position now to lock up the waist. Okay? There's no scramble away, and you get your reversal points. So let's have a look at this from another angle so you can see what's happening here. We start off, fairly common situation. We get a hold of our training partner's wrist. Then when we come up, we thread the elbow through into the armpit. When he goes to yank out, it's significantly more difficult. Now we just post our hand on our training partner's hip. We hit the basic knee lever, taking him over. The last step is for us to come up to a knee. So when he goes to scramble away from us, we're in the perfect position to lock up. He tries to get out, the body lock holds him in place, and we're in excellent position now to control our opponent and get through to our pass. Once again, from a basic knee shield type situation, we go through and thread our elbow in place. Now we come down to the floor, post on our training partner's hip, and then hit that simple knee lever, straight down, up to our knee. He gets back up, tries to scramble away, and we find ourselves in the perfect position now to lock up. Everywhere we go now, you'll be able to return your opponent's shoulders to the mat and go into all of your body lock guard passes that we'll look at in the passing section. This is an excellent way to get more body contact with an opponent and set up strong knee levers. Let's go further into this knee lever series. A huge part of your ability to succeed in competitive sparring or competition is the idea of overcoming failure. Once you get a reputation as someone who's good at a given move, of course people are going to anticipate it, they're going to resist it. And so your ability to go from a failed initial move onto a successful follow-up is a huge part of your success. Let's look at why, one of the most common reasons why, a knee lever might fail. It usually has to do with your opponent sagging their weight down in the direction opposite that you're trying to lever their hips. So, from a fairly standard knee lever type situation where we've done a good job of controlling our training partner's wrist and we're ready to play here, when we go in on our training partner and place our foot across their leg, we're trying to take them over our, in this case, left shoulder. So I'm controlling his right wrist and I'm trying to take him over my left shoulder. So of course, if I've hit this move successfully a couple of times, what do you think my opponent's going to want to do? He's going to want to shift his body down and away to the right, like so. Okay, so what I want is his body coming up and over my left so I can sweep him over. Once I've hit the move successfully a couple of times, of course he's going to resist that. He's going to start moving back in this direction. When we see this kind of thing going on, rather than me just trying to lever him over unsuccessfully when I no longer am underneath the center of gravity, I've got to start coming forward on my opponent. Okay, so I'm going to take his wrist, I'm just going to push it in towards my opponent like so. So, and from here I'm going to catch my training partner at the leg. A classic single leg situation. Now, from a situation like this, if he's full and just stays where he is, well, it's very easy for me to come up and start pulling him straight backwards to the mat. So of course, no one's going to stand there. They're going to take their body and try to pull their body out and get away from us. As they do so, we just drop our foot, we catch our training partner's leg, and from here we come right up. My foot curling underneath me, second foot coming back, we find ourselves coming right up into the single leg situation once again. And from single leg, we're always looking to take training partner high and put them down to the mat. So once again, we start off in a classic situation, catching our training partner at the wrist. We're looking to bring our head in front of them. We're looking to bring their body in close. And from here, bring them over our shoulder. That's always what our gambit is. They, of course, don't want this to happen. And so they start pulling their body weight down and away from us. The knee lever now has become untenable. So we're going to push up. We're going to catch our training partner around the single leg. If he's foolish and just stays in a position like so, we'll just heist forward and put him down. So of course he's going to try and pull his legs free, and we catch onto our opponent's legs like so. As he goes to get away, look how we just pull our foot around the corner and come up into our training partner's body. We're in the perfect position now to make our switch to body locks, single leg, whatever preference you have. Now, let's look again at this notion of a forward heist. Whenever we're in front of an opponent, we want to come up and forward. Here's my initial start position. I need to have one foot down, like so, and bring the second leg behind me. It's that which enables me to heist up to my knees and create a strong base of support to stand up and go into whatever takedown you have in mind. So the mechanics, I can't have my feet remain in front of me. That will always prevent me from getting up. So we have to lower the hurdle that we have to go over, my knee is a hurdle. I can't go forward over it. So I lower the first hurdle and I put my second leg in behind me. It's that action now. There's no impediments in front of me to prevent my body coming up and into a given takedown. So for a situation where we work like so, in a fairly standard situation, I will take him over in this direction. He understands this and starts moving his body back and away. So from here, I come up and catch. If he's naive, we'll just drive forward and put him down. Presumably he's not naive. As he drops out and goes to stand up and away, look how my foot comes in and my second foot comes back. So we're in the perfect position to go up and capture our training partner. The legs, you can transition off to the hips, whatever you feel like. Okay. This idea of coming up against an opponent who's sinking their weight back and away is very, very important whenever we've successfully hit a knee lever several times and our opponent is trying to resist. Now we're looking at this theme of overcoming failure. One of the great virtues of knee levers is it's a very simple move. Now that's ordinarily a virtue, but of course if it's so simple, your opponent will quickly figure out when you're trying to do it, and usually the counters to simple moves are themselves pretty simple. So it won't take them long to figure out what they need to do to stop you. So if I have a right side half guard, I want to take my opponent over my left shoulder. Pretty soon your opponent's going to figure that out, and they're all going to start moving their body weight back and away. So now the onus is on us to sit up. When we see this, an excellent follow-up move is a simple drag that puts my opponent's hands on the mat and gives us the ability to get to the far hip. From here, we're always looking to keep our head higher than their head. Two ways we can do this. One is to collapse his arm and use our elbow as a base of support, so we can heist up and get top position. Second, from here, is to place, if I can't bring his arm down, it's strong. I can't bend the arm, then I just place my hand on top of his. Okay? Don't put your hand out here to the side. Now he can reach back, take an underhook, and then when you come up, you won't have an advantage. When you place your hand on top of his, he tries to take the hand back. It's more difficult, it's slow. Okay? And then from here, we quickly heist up and get our two arms in behind him. From here, it's tempting to go straight into a seatbelt. It's not wrong, but if the guy stands up on you, then you get all discombobulated, you leave the floor, you don't really control the situation. So typically what we like to do is lock in a power half Nelson. And then from here, we just go forward. We put our opponent down in a way where he's facing the ceiling. There's no danger now of our opponent standing up on us. And as a result, we get a much more controlling finish to the move. So once again, I have a fairly conventional half guard situation. If I can, I'll hit my knee lever. It takes him over my left shoulder. Of course, he knows that, so he takes everything down towards the right hip. As a result, we can use our leg like a pendulum and come up and get to our training partner's hip. From here, we're always looking to get our head over our opponent's head. Second way to do this is to base on my training partner's hand, pop up, and go in behind his arms. Because I have a right hook, I'll throw my power half on the left side. So we have diagonal control over our opponent. Both sides of the body are controlled. If I throw my power half on the same side as the hook, he just puts any kind of resistance, I have no ability to control him and I'll fall off to the side. So if I have a right hook, I want a left power half. Now from here, I just get height over my training partner's head and I step over his hip with my knee. When he tries to resist, you just put all the weight forward onto the head. Now, there's no danger of him standing up on you. So this is a very intuitive, simple, and highly effective follow-up to a failed knee lever. Now, we've been looking at the idea of using knee levers and accommodating failure. One of the great virtues of the knee lever is its relative simplicity. It's a pretty simple move. Unfortunately, that means it's an easy move to read for your opponents. If you've hit the move successfully 2 or 3 times, they can see the conditions starting to happen again. They know exactly what you want. So, in any knee lever, we're always looking to take away our opponent's post on the side I'm levering towards. I'm taking him over my left shoulder, so I want to take away his right post. We do it usually with 2 on 1 wrist or 2 on 1 elbow. I get my head inside his head, and from this position, we lever him over. He doesn't have a post, I'm controlling him, and as a result, he falls pretty easily. Okay? If he was able to physically rip his hands out of my post, and then I attempted a knee lever, well, he could post with his hand and he wouldn't go over. Okay, so that's always what we're looking to do, to control that hand in place. Now let's understand that knee lever works best when his head is low and to the outside. Those are the situations where it's very easy to tilt someone over with a knee lever. That's very good, rotate around, the lower his hips are, because now my knee functions right behind his buttocks to create a strong lever to move his hips. So he needs his head down, hips down, and I can knee lever him. So once you've hit this move successfully 2 or 3 times, what do you think is going to happen? He's going to start raising his hips and his head. Okay, that's a smart thing for him to do. So when he feels the knee lever coming on, that's going to be the result. That kind of rising. And now I can't take him over. But because he's risen with the head and the hips, it's going to become very easy for us now to push and post that elbow aside. I put my ear on his back and control the far hip. So when he reaches back to the whizzer, my head position makes it impossible. If my head wasn't connected and I reached over his back, well, he could easily put in a whizzer and save himself. So we always want the ear in place. Now we heist and come up. I have a right hook in. I'm sure you can all anticipate by now, that means my power half should be on this side. If his body is strong and resistant and I put the power half on the same side as the hook, and then from here I try to put any kind of pressure on, he makes a strong resistant body, you just feel like you have no ability to stay on, you slip off. So it's very important, if I have a right hook, my power half goes on that side. It's also very important that I go forward on my opponent's body and I cover the far hip. If I don't cover the far hip and I'm down the body, I have no leverage. Okay, it makes his body strong and I'll never take him over. So the whole thing is I cover that far hip. Then from here I come up, lock, and I physically push the head under the opposite armpit. And as a result, his chest faces the ceiling and we're on board ready to go. So once again, starting position, basic half guard. From here, if I get 2 on 1 wrist, or even better, 2 on 1 elbow, this is a great opportunity to hit good knee levers. All that's required is my head come to the inside. From here, he has no post and goes over very easily. Okay, you do that 2 or 3 times successfully, you're going to start getting nervous when you get to this position. So now he knows the head must come down. He knows the hips must stay down for an effective knee lever. So he just jumps up almost like a kind of a quasi 4-point position and you can't get anything going. However, there's so much space between us now that the elbow post is very easy. Now you've got an exposed back to work with. From here, we go around our training partner's waist and we put our ear on his back. Then we come up, we've got that hook in, we cover the far hip. Because I have a right hook, I throw my power half on the left side. You could just throw the second hook in. It's not wrong, and you score. So in a jiu-jitsu context, I can understand why you do this. But as a general rule from here, if your opponent goes to stand up and you lose contact with the mat, you've scored, but you're not really controlling your opponent. And in some contexts, that could be very hazardous, like mixed martial arts, for example. Okay, it could work, it's not wrong, but it could also backfire. Contrast that with the use of a power half Nelson, where we go through and send the man over, and now you have the same scoring position. It's very easy to get the hooks in on the floor, and there's no way that I can stand up from here, and now you can just focus on strangling him. So, there you have the idea of working with an elbow post that exposes your opponent's back when he goes to resist a knee lever. Now, we've been looking at this idea of working with knee levers. Most of the knee levers we've worked with so far did not involve chest-to-chest contact. There was distance between your opponent's chest and yours, and as a result, you had to control their wrists with double two on one wrist, one on one wrist, two on one elbow, etc., etc. That took away their post hand and enabled you to sweep them over. A natural question for you guys to be asking is, well, what if this cat gets chest to chest contact on me? What if he gets an underhook on me? He's pinned my shoulder to the mat. What do we do now? You can still hit very effective knee levers even when your opponent's chest to chest and even when they have the underhook. You can use it as a sweep, but in all honesty, at championship level, and that's always the level I want you guys aspiring to, I don't want you to be beating white belts, I want you to be beating very, very good black belts. At that level, it functions less as a direct sweep and more as an opening into other things that will give you the sweep. Either way, it's a great value to you. So let's have a look at it now. Let's look at it first, just as a direct sweep. You normally hit this one the first time you try it. The guy doesn't expect it, doesn't see it. You take him over, and then the next time you try it, he will be anticipating it, and then you'll have to go into the moves that we look at subsequently. So let's have a look at it with an opponent here. Like any knee lever, my inside leg goes over his calf muscle, just like so. That never really changes. This time he's got an underhook and he's chest to chest. So what I'm going to do is take my elbow and put it on top of his elbow and then just hold his shoulder at the rear deltoid where it meets the lat muscle. Okay, so nothing crazy. I'm not trying to do this where I get a deep overhook or anything like that. I just block his elbow and I put my hand in here. Okay, so Nick doesn't feel like I'm intimidating here with a strong grip, like I'm about to do something crazy. Okay, he just feels like, okay, I'm in the rider's seat here. Very often in this position, your opponent will have his knee up, so there may be a need for you to pinch your knees around and bring his knee down to the floor. Okay, now I just put my foot right over his knee, and I put my second foot over my own. Okay, I'm not crossing my ankles. I just put them here or even just close together. What counts is this inside leg. The knee goes right behind his buttocks. Okay, now from this position, as I pinch in on his elbow, I just put my second hand on his lat, and then I just bring my buttocks off the floor and I just tilt them over to the side. As he goes to fall, he's got no base of support. He can't reach out with his right hand. And as a result, we get a quick tilt over to a hip. Now, once we get the tilt, he's going to do everything he can to rip his right arm out. But I'm literally sitting on top of it. It's very, very difficult, even with no gi. Now I have to unlock my feet. They're currently close together. I have to get my left foot behind me and my right foot forward. And as a result, we come up into a complete reversal and you just switch positions on your opponent. So once again, he's in the driver's seat, his knees off the floor. If the knee's off the floor, the first thing we got to do is put his knee on the mat. Okay, or at least get it close to the mat. Now from here, I take my foot over his. We're in the perfect position now to pinch around our training partner's knees. Always we start with that pinch. Now he goes to move his right leg around. It's difficult. Now we just push and point our knees. Guys, I'm not bridging. I'm not bridging him over. That's not the idea. I just give a little pop of my hips and I just point my knees over to the side. He can't move his arm free. Then I just step my foot forward and we end up with a nice reversal over to the side. From another angle. Chest to chest. I take my elbow and block. If his knee's on the floor, then just start right from here. Just bring your foot up to his. Now from this position, I pinch, lift, and point my knees. Again, you are not doing an upa where you try to bridge the guy over. That's not the idea. Okay? All I do is just control his hip with the pinch of my knees. Just give a little pop and then I just point. And as a result, we go right over. When you look at it the first time, you're like, my God, that's too good to be true. But you'll see in competition, my students use this move a lot with a tremendous amount of success. I'm going to show you one little variation in foot position that you don't always have to use, but sometimes I do and I get good results with it. Okay, most of the time, I always encourage you guys to use this foot position, your right calf over their right calf, okay? Every so often, in chest-to-chest positions, none of the other knee levers, just this one, an opponent will have his legs in a position where you can physically stand on the calf muscle. Not a bad thing, because now when he tries to take his knee off the mat, he can't do it. And this too gives you a very strong knee pinch. The biggest danger we face, he takes the knee off the mat and then you can't knee lever. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll physically stand on his calf muscle. So when he tries to take it off, he can't do it. I just bridge, then tilt him over. Okay? So I will use that on occasion, just in this chest-to-chest context. I wouldn't recommend it with the other knee levels we've looked at. Okay, just this one specific context because he can't move very much because he's chest-to-chest with you. I often do this on people who are trying to get their knee off the mat. Used in this way, you can get a really simple and highly effective reversal from a situation that looks pretty bad. He's in a good passing position, chest-to-chest with an underhook. And you can really upset someone's day with this simple reversal. Now, the knee lever is not only a fantastic method of sweeping people in and of itself, it's also just a great way to off-balance opponents and force them to base out with either their hands or their feet in ways that create opportunities to go into other great attacks. I'm sure you guys have all figured out that probably the best overall method of attacking from half guard involves the use of tight waists, which enable us to come up towards an opponent and gain maximum connection to an opponent so we can impose the game of jiu-jitsu from underneath. Now, let's look at how we can do this in cases where an opponent has an underhook on us, preventing us from getting to the tight waist. So, we're down in what appears to be a disadvantageous position where our opponent is chest to chest and they have the underhook on us. If someone came into the room right now and was asked who's winning this fight and they had a good knowledge of jiu-jitsu, they would almost invariably point to the person on top because they have chest to chest position, they have the underhook, and as a result they can pin both of my shoulders and my head down to the mat and put considerable control over me. So a natural question to ask here is, okay, how do I recover from this? This is a losing situation. This is good for him and very bad for me. Well, one great way is a knee lever. If I see my opponent has his knee on the floor, I just go directly to the knee lever. I just bring my foot right over his knee, and then from this position, we go in and attack his balance. Now, if we move around this way, you're going to see that my opponent has this underhook. In the previous move, I covered the elbow. So when we hit our knee lever, we took him right over. This time, I'm going to allow my opponent an escape. I put my hand anywhere over their back and I go to hit the knee lever so they can base out with their right arm. But when they go to base out with their right arm, it's very easy for me to put my arm underneath theirs and my second hand comes through to my chest. So one hand goes through, the other hand goes through. So that when we come out to the other side, we find ourselves in the perfect position now to come up into our favorite grip, the tight waist. Once we get to the tight waist, we know where to go from here. We take our outside hook and then we make a decision. Will we go down to a shoulder, in which case we'll go down like so, all the way through to the lower leg shift. And from the lower leg shift, we know 1,000 different ways to start tilting and off balancing people. So once again, we have an opponent here in front of us. He's done a good job of getting to that underhook. We go through, pin our opponent's knee down towards the floor. Then we give them an opportunity to base out with their right hand, just like so. We bring our hands inside and come up into a good attacking position, where now I have the grip that we're always looking for. We go over the top, block, and we're in good position to attack. If he bases out with his hand, we're in a good position now to go through to our training partner's back, etc., etc. All of the moves that we looked at earlier in the video will now become available. This is one of my absolute favorite strategies from bottom position. Anytime the opponent's got the beat on us and has gotten chest to chest with an underhook, you can just turn the whole match around from half guard bottom using this simple method. You can also use the foot on calf method that I talked about earlier. because you're in the chest-to-chest position. Sometimes you have an opponent who does a good job of taking the knee off the floor. And under those circumstances, look how we can just bring our two knees around his hip, bring his knee down to the mat, and then just stand over our training partner's calf muscle. So when he goes to take his knee off the mat, it's quite difficult. And then from here we hit the same knee lever that forces his hand out to the floor. Second hand comes in, and we find ourselves right back in position, ready to go. So this represents one of the absolute easiest and most effective ways of turning a half guard situation around from a losing situation where your opponent is chest to chest with an underhook, pinning your two shoulders to the mat, to a winning situation where you come up onto your side, only one of your shoulders on the mat, and you go into that lower leg shift from where all the moves we looked at throughout this video become possible. Now we're looking at knee levers. We're trying to accommodate the idea that the knee lever has more function than just being a sweep. It's also a tremendous method of opening opponents up in ways which enable us to go into very profitable second moves. As you go with more and more athletic opponents, you're going to get different kinds of reactions to a strong initial knee lever. One of the most common is a back step with my opponent's foot, which prevents us from taking them over. Let's have a look at it. Okay, my opponent's chest to chest has the underhook. And we've done a good job of trapping the arm by putting the elbow over his elbow and putting the hand on the lat. We've done a good job of getting the fundamental knee lever position. We've done a good job of bringing our hips ever so slightly off the mat. We go to point the knee. My opponent can't base out with his right arm, so he chooses the opposite leg. So we go in, we hit a good hard knee lever, and he bases out with his leg, so he doesn't go over. I try to take him over, he bases out, then he kicks back, and the move didn't work. Okay, common situation. So what should we be looking to do? If I can see my opponent has gone with the back step option, my best follow-up to this is for me to take my knee to my chest. This creates an immediate problem for my opponent. If he tries to come back, comes back right into a butterfly hook. Not only a butterfly hook with his arm trapped. So when he comes back, we just lift, hit a forward shift, and take the man over with sumigaeshi. Okay, so as my knee lever fails, the sumigaeshi succeeds. This is an incredibly useful combination attack for you to employ against tough opponents. So once again, we have a basic knee lever position. At this stage, my training partner is in the driver's seat. He's got chest-to-chest contact. He's pinned my two shoulders to the mat. We want to take that away from him by hitting a good sharp knee lever that forces him into that defensive back step. I don't want to keep my knee down here. He can step over it and recover. So instead, I bring my knee up high. So when he goes to recover, he recovers onto my butterfly hook. Now from this position, he tries to come up. I get my second butterfly hook in. I hit a simple forward shift. Then from here, I go right away into the classic sumigaeshi that puts him down. And this is a classic way of combining two different moves, a knee lever and a sumigaeshi, to go right into your attacks. Knee lever creates the step. Butterfly hook, he goes to recover. Now I've got two butterfly hooks in place. A simple forward shift, foot comes through, and sumigaeshi for the sweep. This is a beautiful and highly effective method of using an initial knee lever from a situation where you could never really hit a successful sumigaeshi and turn it into a great follow-up move.